Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to talk about our stances. Stances are very important in the martial arts, specifically Taekwondo Sudo. So we're going to break down the first few basic stances and then let everybody really play with them a bit. I really want everyone to practice these, get used to them, all that good stuff. So in this section, we're going to talk about the front stance, horseback stance, crouching stance, kneeling stance, and then we'll hit into the L stance and maybe the X stance. But for right now, I want to focus on this first four. Front stance, horseback stance. Okay, so let's start with the front stance. The front stance is the very first stance that you learn when you come into the school. It's very basic, very simple. Let's talk about it really quick. So when you hear terms like weight 50-50 and shoulder width and feet, this and that, we're talking about distance of measure. So let's first talk about weight 50-50. If I say weight 50-50, it means equal amount of weight is on the right and left side. We're not shifting more one way or the other. We're equally balanced, okay? And then we're talking about shoulder width and feet width, or feet length. However wide your shoulder is, it is equal to 2 of your own feet. So from tip to tip of your shoulders to your center of your neck, there's one of your feet, there's another foot. So I'll use the term shoulder width, or I'll use the term feet. So for the front stance, to give you an example, it is 2 feet wide, or 1 shoulder width, 3 feet long, okay? So, to give you an idea, if you're standing the way I'm standing right now, that's shoulder width. My feet are directly below my shoulders, so that's 2 feet wide. So if I'm out here in the center, put my feet out, boom. Or another way you can do this, you take your arms, dangle them down, point your fingers down to the ground, there's where your big toes should land. There's your 2 feet. Now, let's talk about length. So, we take our front stance. If I go off this corner here, there's 1, 2, 3 feet. Boom. There is the proper length and width of our front stance. I'm going to turn this way now so you can see. So if I have, there is 1 foot, there's 2 foot, there's 3 of my feet, back to there, there's my front stance. Okay? So we have 2 feet wide, 3 feet long. Our front knee is bent. Our back leg is straight. Weight is 50-50. So far so good, you with me? Toes, both sets of toes pointing forwards. What you'll see is a lot of new students, they'll be like so. That back foot will be cocked sideways. You want them both facing forwards, all right? Hands are up guarding, shoulders and hips squared to the front. Our enemy is right here. Not here, not here, not here. Now, this front stance is very strong forwards and backwards. This way and this way, not so much. You can go ahead and push and all you want in the front, going front and back. Going to the side, you have a little bit less stability. But, a good way to test that is, if you feel like you're doing this and you're on a tight rope, you're too narrow. Make sure you have that good width. And if you don't feel like you can really good 50-50 weight distribution, you're not long enough. Like so. All right? So, a front stance should be natural, right or left. So you hear us use the term right leg back, left leg back, front stance. That's something you guys gotta pay attention to. So if I say, a lot of times I'll say right leg back, front stance, but I sometimes might just throw a curveball and say left leg forward, front stance. It's the same thing versus right leg back. So, really gotta pay attention to those things. Okay, so the next one we're talking about is the horseback stance. Horseback stance is the one that people like to complain about because it really works your thighs if you're doing the horseback stance correctly. So, again, let's talk about the length and width. Horseback stance only has width. It does not have length. It is 4 feet wide. So basically, if you can have my shoulder width here, leave that foot there, boom. There's my horseback stance width. 4 feet wide or 2 shoulder widths. That long times 2. Both feet pointing forwards. Take those knees, bend them. Now, a lot of people will bend them and do this. Push those knees outward. You want, this is where you start feeling your weight a little bit more. When you put your weight out, your knees out, you'll feel the weight on the blades outside of your feet, pressing out. You want that. You don't want an even feel on your feet because that means that your knees are in. You want your knees out, pressing outwards. The horseback stance is extremely strong this way, horribly weak this way. There's nothing to stop somebody from pushing me over this way. So the horseback stance does not face your enemy like this. Horseback stance faces their enemy like this, or like this. That way the strength is towards the enemy. We're facing like this, so you can see it better. So again, 4 feet wide, or 2 shoulder widths, knees bent over feet, weight is again 50-50, hands are up guarding towards the enemy. So one of the things you'll hear us say is, push that tailbone down to the ground, because you don't want to do this. This looks ridiculous. So you want to push that tailbone straight down so your back stays up. Horseback stance is great for side kicks, but it takes some time to get used to them. So when you're doing a horseback stance, you should be able to stand here after about 20-30 seconds if you're doing it right. You should start feeling a little tight in your legs. Then after a while, your legs will start shaking, and then you get tired. Like, you come up like, oh! That's a good thing. There's your horseback stance. Okay, so let's talk about the kneeling stance. Kneeling stance is a useful stance for low targets, or if you fell and you gotta get back up, it gives you good stability on a low plane. The kneeling stance gives you 3 points of contact with the ground if you're on a slippery surface and you just want to stand up. Kneeling stance will give you a good way to hold your balance. So the best way to do this, I'm going to turn this so you can see a little better, is get into a good front stance, and take that back knee and drop it down to the ground. So there is our kneeling stance. Point 1, right here, 2, and 3. There's my 3 points of contact with the ground. Now a lot of new students will do this. Don't do that. You're better than that. Ball the foot. There we go. Hands are up guarded. The weight being 50-50 does not apply here. You have more like 60% to 70% of your weight on your back knee. So, when we do this, make sure you have that again. Your back is upright, your shoulders are square, your hands are up and guarding, and you got a good point on your front foot, knee, and your back leg. Alright, that's your kneeling stance. Alright, the next one we're going to talk about is the crouching stance. This one is one you're probably going to use a lot in sparring as you higher in rank, but people have a tendency to fudge it up a little bit. So, again, we're going to start in our front stance, but what we're going to do is we're going to lose our points of contact with our full foot. We're going to go right to the ball of the foot only. So, I'm going to be in this position here. So, you notice how front stance is nice and long and solid. Crouching stance, it's very short, truncated a little bit. I'm on the balls of both my feet here. So that way I can move quick, forward, backwards, side. Gives you a good maneuverability. So the biggest details of the crouching stance, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Get on the balls of feet. Bring the back foot forward a little bit. Because you don't want to be fully extended. You want to be shorter on this one so you can move. So the crouching stance is good for quick motions forward, backwards, or laterally to move. Alright? There's your crouching stance. Okay, the next one we're talking about is the L stance. This is a stance we use a lot, middle and upper ranks. It's a core stance like the front stance and horseback stance, and it can be done a couple different ways, but here's the specific ways I want everyone to start focusing at the beginning. Okay, so the L stance, there is nothing width on this, but it is 3 feet long. So I'm going to kind of go on the side here. I'm going to start my back foot right on this corner and follow this line up. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3 feet long. I'm going to take my toes, leave them there, but I'm going to kick my heel out of it, like so. Now, if I have it 50-50, you'll notice that my core is right here. I don't want that. I want my core back here. I want my foot, my knee, my hip, and my shoulder all in line. So the weight is 75-25. So 3/4 of your weight is on the back foot here, 25 is on the front. A good L stance, you should be able to lift your foot off the ground without your shoulders moving. So that's a good test. You get in your L stance, lift your foot off the ground. Are your shoulders doing this? Because if your shoulder, if I'm even shifting my weight a little bit, I lift my front foot off. See how my shoulders move? Versus here, doing an L stance. So my shoulders aren't shifting backwards or forwards. So for the L stance, a lot of people do that. They get tired. They'll lock that leg out. Kind of lose the point. The whole point of the L stance is so you can kick. While the person seeing your telegraphing, or seeing you shifting your weight back and forth. So what I'm going to talk about now is the L stance facing this direction. So if my foot, put my foot in my pant up here so you can see better, is straight on, I'm like so, it put a lot of torque on the knees. Don't want that. So if we take our foot and just cock that heel out a little bit, so we're kind of like this motion. So the front foot is at an angle, probably like a 5-degree angle. It's much more relaxed. Our hips and shoulders are 45 degrees to the side. Hands are up guarding. Again, our target is off the front foot there. So again, 3/4 of the weight, back, 25 front, 45-degree angle, hips and shoulders, hands up guarding. That's your L stance.